Good evening. This is Larry Stallings, Community Church of Sebastopol. And this crazy Lenten season with all the shelter in place events going on around us, I'll be sharing a faith journey with you. There'll be a couple of things that I'll mention several times because they just were a big part of me understanding faith in the beginning. I'll be talking about Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12-step program. And the other thing that I'll mention is the dark night of the soul. I'm sure you remember that was the Spanish mystic John of the Cross. Golly, I guess about 600-700 years ago now. But he wrote a good deal about souls being in distress and that we can live through it. My journey actually started when I was 18 or 19. I joined the Marine Corps right after high school. I'd gone to church my whole life, but it wasn't a personal thing at all. It was just something I had to do because my parents made me, and my brother. So I went in the Marine Corps. It was just like letting a hungry dog out of the pen, maybe. And of course, I fell into a bunch of Marines that drank a lot, and of course I did it too. And I started experiencing blackouts very early. I would have long periods of time that I did not remember what I did. I tried to piece it together, but the best way I could figure out what I did was listen to my friends tell me what I did the night before. And of course, the friends telling me what I did graduated to the police telling me what I did. I was actually arrested 4 separate occasions between 1966 and 1971, 72 in there. And I never understood what was going on. I actually went to many different churches trying to fix me, thinking that if I went to church, maybe God would be really good to me and remove this compulsion to drink and so on, but it never happened, and I just slowly got worse. The blackouts became tremendous. And the last event I had when drinking was I was stationed in the military at McCord Air Force Base in Tacoma, Washington. And at 2 a.m. one morning, I ran over the gate and over the guard shack. They closed it at 8 p.m. and I opened it at 1 a.m. And to this day, I don't remember doing it. And of course, my car was wrecked and the military police were there and they pieced everything together. And the agreement that my military commander made at the time was if I would pay for the damages and I would go to an alcoholism counseling program, that he would not reduce me in rank and not give me a big fine. So I signed up for that, of course, immediately. I went over to this counseling program and they immediately invited me to AA. And that began the journey of getting well. The 12 steps were absolutely remarkable. So I did get well. I quit drinking. And then I met Diane, my wife who I lost recently, and we got married. We had a daughter named Faith Gillen Stallings. She's resides in San Antonio now as a professional psychologist. But we're really doing well. We were in the military and pretty happy and just having a pretty good life of it. I went to a lot of meetings and began to develop faith. It didn't come from churches. It came from AA meetings. And then I started taking some college classes with the Benedictines at St. Martin's Abbey in Lacey, Washington, and they were absolutely remarkable. And I soon entered a course of study with them and was baptized into the Catholic Church and started an even more pronounced journey. Diane's family were Catholic. I never was. I was born and raised in the old classic Church of Christ, but that really worked for us for a very long time. I finished a bachelor's degree and we went to Texas, and I was doing ROTC because I planned to make a career out of the military, because it seemed like the best thing we could do, that I could do for my family. So I did all that stuff. I went to different schools and different classes and different things, and I was commissioned into the Army as an officer in 1978, in July, Fort Raleigh, Kansas. So we went back to Fort Ord, our first assignment, and I say back because Diane's family is from Redwood City and it was very, very close. We really enjoyed it. We had a son born there that we named Samuel Castor Stallings after Diane's great-grandfather and her father, and had a good time. And we were transferred then to Barstow, California. We continued doing well. I continued going to lots of AA meetings. And then we were transferred to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri after a couple years. And on a hot July morning in 1983, Sam was 3 years, 3 months. He was playing hide and seek with the kids in the neighborhood, and he crawled into a Foot Locker, suffocated, and died. I was sober 6 years then. Many of my friends wondered why I didn't go back to drinking, but my faith had grown quite a bit, using the 12 steps, going to church regularly. That doesn't explain the heartache, or it doesn't diminish the pain and the insanity and the shock that came with losing a child. We struggled. We kept moving forward. We conceived again, and the next summer, the pregnancy wasn't going well. So Diane went into labor at 22 weeks. Little girl was born. She weighed 1 pound. When she was born, Diane and I were in the delivery room, and her heart was beating. She was a little bitty thing, but her heart was beating in her chest. And we were very grateful for that we got to experience a live birth. We named her Hope, and she lived 45 minutes. During that 45 minutes, we baptized her and gave her back to God. We didn't baptize her because we thought she was in some way attached to original sin and all that propaganda that we hear. It was the only act of faith that we knew we could do to give her back to eternal life. After that, we kind of gave up on having a bigger family and these types of things. The Army was very benevolent then and offered us an assignment in Germany where the whole family could go. So we went to Germany with our now 9-year-old daughter, Faith, and Diane and I went, and we decided that we were going to devote ourselves to the 12-step programs, that we were going to really promote wellness in the military community. When we got there, I went to the chaplain's office right away, and they did not have an AA meeting on this installation at Pirmasens, Germany. It was Husterhof Kaserne. So I talked to them for a while. They gave me a key to the chapel, and we maintained meetings on Friday nights for 3 years. One of us was always there to conduct the meeting. It was a really good experience. And we came back to California again, which is an interesting part of the story. But while there, we surprised ourselves. I was 40 and Diane was 39, and we conceived another baby. We obviously were scared completely. We were in shock that we were pregnant at that age and having lost 2 kids. But that baby was born, and he's doing quite well, living in Redwood City now, working for Google. He's a Harvard grad. His name's Billy, and it's given us a lot of joy. So spiritually, I felt like I'd been restored. It was quite a remarkable experience at age 40 to have a son after losing 2 other children. We came back to Fort Ord, and I was assigned to the 7th Infantry Division. And during those times, the dark nights that John of the Cross wrote about was really more on the family, on Diane, than me. As I was deployed to Panama, Christmas of 1989, when we went down to gather up Manuel Noriega and bring him back. And she took care of the family while I was down there. And then about 10 months later, I was tapped to go to Desert Storm. This was a much longer deployment, but again, she was left with the kids, and I was off playing soldier halfway around the world. but it did work out, and it was pretty good. We retired a few years later and was very involved with religion and AA and these types of things. I actually signed up for and completed 4 years of seminary and was ordained to the diaconate in San Antonio in the year 2000. I actually resigned from that in the year 2006 when Pope Benedict stated that women should not be a part of liturgy and that gays were gravely disordered. I could not wear an alban stole and stand up before the people of God, but I knew that was morally wrong and absolutely sinful to even say. So we quit going to church, kept going to AA, and had an amazing experience happen to us when we were in San Antonio. Diane had a baby when she was 19 in San Francisco, about 6 or 7 years before I knew her. And in those days, all adoptions were closed. She gave up this little boy who she held for about 30 seconds to the nuns, literally, and they took him away. We learned later that he was adopted by a family in Pacifica who adopted 3 children. Mike was an optometrist, and his wife Diana was a banker. Well, this young boy, who they named Mark Bryant, wanted to find his biological family. He wanted to know his roots. So to make a real long story short, we met each other by going to the adoption boards online. We came out here to visit. Diane went out by herself first. Billy and Paul surprised her. And as part of this story, Billy and Paul were already out here because they were both working for Google at the time. So I'll never forget the time that Diane called Billy and said, "Sit down, I got to tell you something." And he tells us later he was really scared, but she said, "Guess what? You've got a brother." And that is a funny story to all of us to this day. But she finally went out on her own and met Mark, and it was a Cinderella story. We found out that we had a wonderful daughter-in-law and 3 more grandchildren. So we came out in May to the oldest granddaughter, Haley's high school graduation, to meet the family. And it was a wonderful time. We drove out, drove back, and on the way back, I told Diane that I would find a job and move us out here to California so she could be with her boys. I was almost 63 at the time, but we made it happen, and we moved out here. And everything was really going wonderfully. And just after we were here, maybe 6 or 7 months, Diane was really feeling ill. She had experienced anemia back in San Antonio. The doctors would just give her iron infusions, and that would work for a while, but it just kept repeating itself. Well, a very wise doctor did a bone marrow check and found out that she had multiple myeloma, an incurable cancer of the bloodstream. I mean, they call it a blood cancer, but it's actually the stem cells that are affected greatly. We were stunned. The research we read about it wasn't promising, but the doctor said, "You'll have about 6 or 7 years." And we were pretty grateful for that because Diane was back home in the state that she was born in. She had found the first son that she ever had and gave up for adoption. So we lived up here for a very long time and finally settled in Santa Rosa, buying a home. And her nurse navigator friend, Donna McPherson, went to a church service at Community Church and told her how fantastic she was, and then she told me she wanted to go. And I think I had a strong intuition that our natural faith was leading us back to church. So we went. It was a phenomenal experience, and we just stayed. And then about a year after we joined, Diane started experiencing serious complications from all the years of chemo. She had to take infusions 6 times per month. She had a serious problem with diabetes, blood clots, all the complications that come from heavy doses of chemo. But she started really failing her health 2 years ago. She had a stroke. The diabetes was going crazy, and she just was in the hospital an awful lot. And then towards the end of that, she said, she told me that she's not going to fight anymore. She's going to deny treatment because she was sick all the time, in the hospital all the time. So that's what she decided to do. And I'll never forget what she told Pastor Benjamin when he came to see her. She literally planned her memorial service. She's Irish, so that's no surprise. And she said to Ben that I'm ready to meet my God, and I feel very good about it. Quite an amazing statement. She lost consciousness on a Tuesday, and then she passed just after midnight, 4 days later on a Friday night. So our faith journey was always together until then. All the AA things that we did together. And the seminary stuff we did together. And then, of course, community church we did together. And now she's gone. And the interesting thing about all these large events in my life is that the first one with Sam was just devastating, shocking. The grief was tremendous. And I really thought a lot about John of the Cross when that happened. But then as other big things happened, when we lost hope, it wasn't quite as bad. That dark night wasn't quite as dark. And then the deployments to the combat zones and these types of things, the light wasn't so dark. And then when we had Billy, it was phenomenal. When we got out here, even with the cancer, we knew that we only had 6 or 7 years. We knew it was incurable. But when the time did come, neither one of us were surprised. She was in total control of her journey. And my faith journey simply told me to follow her lead. It was her life and her decision to make. And she made it with great courage. So my faith journey continues here for a very simple and funny reason. When she was chatting with Benjamin, she said, Ben, I can't do anything for you anymore. I just can't. But whatever you need done, Larry will take care of it. So she committed me to the community church of Sebastopol the remainder of my days. So that's essentially how I live out my faith journey today, is being a part of our community and doing what I can to help our church, whether it's godly play or bringing donuts to the middle schoolers or trimming the trees. It doesn't really matter. The journey's the journey. And most importantly, even from the beginning, I never lost faith. And I don't know why, really. I can't explain it. But the dark nights became lighter. The journey continued. And here we are right now in a season where so many people are scared with the coronavirus going on. They're locked up in their homes. But I invite you to remember that the light is always there. People are always around you. Make sure you keep contact with the people you love in your faith community. And we'll all see each other on the other side of this. May God bless you. Have a very fine evening.